Welcome to KTVB Inside the Courtroom, the Lori Vallow trial. We're glad you're here with us as we take an in-depth look inside the courtroom as Lori Vallow is on trial, multiple charges, and of course, as we know, accused of killing or conspiring to kill the deceased wife of her now husband, and also her two children, JJ and Tylee. And so obviously a significant trial, and we are glad you're here watching it with us, and we hope to bring you some in-depth coverage in addition to the coverage you've been seeing online and on our newscast throughout the week. We want to try to get in-depth for you, and we're going to do that today by really getting into this week the testimony. So Monday, no trial. Alex and Shirah here with us today to talk about what they've been watching in the courtroom. No trial Monday. Tuesday, Zulema. This is the wife of now deceased Alex Cox, who is Lori's brother. She was on the stand last week and then picked up again on Tuesday. What did defense attorneys do with her testimony? What was their cross like?
They were kind of focused on basically pushing her to talk about how everything she believed, because she was a part of Lori and Chad's group, right? And she did their podcast with them and stuff. They wanted her to say, this was God telling me all this. Their cross was kind of about more her own personal experiences with God rather than Lori and Chad's experience with her. So they were kind of saying, well, was it God that told you all this, or was it Chad and Lori that told you all this? Because you said that you saw God. She said she saw God in the temple, and an angel came to her, and things like that. And she said, well, I mean, it was kind of a mix of both. I mean, because they manipulated me. I believe in God and I go to the temple, but they also manipulated me to think more of what was really going on. And they showed texts between them about how Lori and Chad were being very caring and sweet towards Zulema, saying, she was a goddess too, and kind of hyping her up, if you will. And so the defense, or Zulema says, I thought that their intentions were evil. They were manipulative. And Jim Archibald goes, well, they told you that they loved you, they were caring for you, how is that manipulative? And she was like, no, the result of all of this was evil. Everything that came about all of this was evil. The manipulation, the results, the children dying, Tammy dying, all of that. And then, it was really short, but that was the end of her testimony.
So, you could really see the defense trying to discredit her testimony, if you will, and I think something that's interesting to note is that Zulema is someone in this case that's been there from the beginning, right? She was there when Chad and Lori first met, and she's someone that we didn't often hear from for the last more than 3 years, right? She's someone that's always been there, but we just never heard much from her directly until this trial. So I think that's really interesting. And, for someone who's been following this case for several years, it was kind of enlightening to hear her talk about not only the way Chad and Lori behaved or acted with her, but also with Alex Cox, Lori's brother, but also her husband of 2 weeks before he passed away.
Right. And so that was they had been together, and but they hadn't been married, so only a short time. And that was one of the things we did talk about last time as well, listening to that patriarchal blessing that Chad, said he gave to Alex, and talked about being married and being, and then that happened after that blessing, right? The two got married pretty quickly after that. And so interesting kind of just how, to hear how it all played out. And do you get a sense that Zulema's perception or understanding of the relationship and understanding of their dynamic has changed as time has progressed? I mean, as she's learned more. Oh yeah, has that has changed? Correct?
Yeah, I mean, she even told the prosecutor, she was like, I don't believe that anymore. I think that she could be still religious and believe in God and things, but I don't think she, follows what Lori and Chad were saying at this point.
Yeah, to Alex's point, I mean, she was saying, yeah, they told me I was special. They told me I was a goddess, and I felt special at the time, but now I don't. Right. I don't feel that. She sees something different. So,
and that is the theme. I mean, we are definitely hearing from friends who had a belief in Chad and Lori, maybe potentially in themselves, thought that there was something very much a religious, almost a higher calling, a place that these two really prescribe to. But also we're hearing people who say that changed as time went on. And one of those people, one of the most significant folks on the stand, it happened, it's Lori's oldest son, so her only surviving child. He took the stand, and that obviously incredibly emotional. Now let's paint the scene really quickly about Colby's dynamic and where he belongs in this. You know, we've looked at that family tree, understanding where he is. So Chad Daybell is Lori's fifth husband. We know of a high school sweetheart, I believe is how he's described, was her first. Second husband is actually Colby's biological father.
Yep.
Third husband adopted Colby.
Joseph Ryan.
Right, and he is Colby's adopted father, and also Tylee Ryan, her second, Lori's second child. That is her biological father.
Right.
So now Colby has a sister, Tylee, and then we have Charles Vallow, who adopted JJ with Lori, and then fifth husband is Chad. So
and Charles essentially also helped raise Colby,
right.
and he attributes him as his father. He
right.
calls him,
Yeah.
And so there's, I mean, we know that there have been questions and kind of get lost. I think it's Colby's biological father that doesn't get talked about a lot. Obviously, the first husband doesn't get talked about a lot, but it is important, I guess, to understand that sequence and to understand kind of what Colby's dynamic is and the relationship he had with his mom. So talk about him taking the stand.
I mean, I knew that it was going to happen. I have heard whispers about it for a while, and I was just waiting. But when they called his name, like, there were audible gasps in the courtroom. Like, people were, like, shocked. I mean, we expected this, but I think, I mean, I don't know. He walked in. He was wearing a white shirt, a tie. His hair was pulled back. He seemed very nervous. But in the type of nervous where you try and, like, push it down a little bit. He came in, and immediately they went into how he found out about Charles Vallow dying.
Okay.
And he said this before, like in the Netflix documentary, he said, I learned he died because my mom told me he had a heart attack.
Wow.
He gets in his car, goes to the house, and he says, I see Alex Cox sitting on the couch with a bandage on his head. I ask what happened. He says, oh, I shot Charles. And then he realizes
that was never in question. I mean, there was never a time that people thought or had inkling that Charles had actually had a heart attack. I mean, we've known all along how he died.
No, but Lori also told people at her son's school that Charles had died by suicide. So everyone was getting pretty conflicting stories, and I mean, Colby was just shocked, clearly, but he said her demeanor was calm that day. Like, I spoke to her, she seemed very calm, and then we also know that, you know, she seemed nonchalant from later testimony. But yeah, so it began with Charles, and he kind of talked about how through the course of the children going missing, he didn't even really know that the kids were missing. He got suspicious because he was receiving texts from Tylee's phone that just didn't seem like her. And there were still Venmo payments being given to him through Tylee's account. And he kept calling, and Tylee wouldn't answer. She would say, no, I'm busy. Or Lori would say, Tylee's really busy right now. And eventually Colby learns, like, oh my God, my mom moved, or he didn't even know his mom moved to Idaho from the beginning, but he didn't even know, I mean, really anything, did he, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, we already assumed and expected his testimony would be powerful, but I mean, we'll play that recording here in a bit, and that, you know, definitely an emotional day in court. But when he spoke to his mom, she said that she can't even tell her location because, you know, people are out to get her. It's too dangerous for anyone to know where she is. And, you know, now you find out later on.
Yeah.
The sequence of events that happened.
And that had to be confusing to him. Obviously, it's as you said, some alarm bells going off for some things that just didn't quite seem right. I don't believe any of us would jump to a conclusion that ended up being as substantial and as, you know, horrific as what ended up playing out. But what was their relationship like? I mean, did he talk about, was that completely unusual?
No, I mean, so what happened this day was that the prosecution's questioning was very short, and I know all of us were really surprised by it. But they ended up bringing him back. But when they still had him on the stand, the defense was cross-examining him. I think their strategy in this scenario was to show that Lori was a good mom. And so they kept asking him, were you suicidal? Did you have depression? Were you unwell at some point in your life? And he said, yeah, I was. And they said, well, did your mom help you through it? And he said, yes. And taught him about Jesus and taught him about the church. And she was very loving and nurturing and got him and Tylee through these hard times, saved the children from their abusive former father. And so, I mean, it's just...
And I guess to that note, on the cross-examination, the defense was asking as well, like, did you grow up learning from your mom about zombies and, light and dark scales? And, to each of these questions, he was answering no. Mm-hmm. So another, strategy, if you will.
Right. So
and it's clear it's clear that there was a change, obviously. Yeah. And he has said before everything changed when my mom met Chad.
Yeah.
So we know that. But
you mentioned that phone call. We're going to hear that interaction. It's an exchange between Lori and Colby, mm-hmm. and I think he speaks to that in that call. I think he mentions that everything changed when Chad Daybell entered her life. But we've heard that about her being a good mother. I mean, that is not new, right?
No.
I believe
even Kay Woodcock
exactly
talked about it.
That first day
they
on the stand,
her a doll.
right?
Yeah. And we've heard a lot of stories about her too. just I guess her pre-life, if you will, before Chad Daybell, and how she was a good mom and she was charismatic and bubbly. Mm-hmm. So definitely this transformation that you're noticing with each testimony.
Right.
And I think this phone call also, Lori was in jail at this point. I believe it was August. So she was in jail, and Colby called her, and it was recorded, and it was very powerful. So let's take a listen.
We should also probably note that it was actually after the remains of the kids were also found.
So August 2020, and it is a long phone call, so hang with us. But as we said, we want to take you inside the courtroom and give you that full in-depth look. So let's listen in as the oldest son of Lori and Lori talk about what has transpired.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You think you can hide from me? Probably because you murdered my siblings. That's probably why I'm talking to you. Maybe you should understand.
I didn't. I'm sorry that you felt that way.
You didn't do anything, right? Mom, I've prayed for you in my worst moments. I've prayed for my siblings who swore to me we're okay. I thought I could trust you. I thought that you were a completely different person. I don't know a murderous mother.
You can make judgments when you weren't there and you don't know what happened.
What happened?
Everyone's making their own judgments.
Mom, you've been shoving BS on my throat for a very long time. I'm going to talk to you.
You can be mad at me.
Hey, listen to me. I'm not mad. Listen to me. Fine, listen to me. I've sat there and prayed. I can't tell you the amount of pain that I have felt from your decisions in Jesus Christ's name. It kills me to watch you sit here and tell me this is a trial. It kills me to watch you take the victim's route and say that this shouldn't have happened to you. When you are telling me that Chad Daybell came into your life, and all of a sudden, everything changes. I'm talking about my spirit feels this. I'm afraid. I trust in you. I gave them every chance I could past my own limitations as a human being. I pushed past all of everything to try to get to you, to help my own mother. You lied to me, specifically to me, more times than I can count about this. To know that they're gone and you knew, and my phone's being texted by my little sister who's not even alive, my little brother who's the sweetest little kid ever. For what purpose? Can you tell me that this is God's will for my whole family, including my stepfather, to be dead? After everything that you've tried to tell me, you can tell me right now that Jesus Christ, the Savior of the world, is on your side. You tell me that with all conviction in your heart that Jesus Christ is on your side. Please.
I can't tell you that.
Say it. Say his name. Say that he told you. And you followed him like exactness. Because I have prayed for you. I sat there and tried my best to forgive you and Chad and Alex. And I was deceived. And I was broken by my own mother. What are you doing? What are you doing? I prayed to Heavenly Father, and I said, you tell me, Father.
All right, have all the instructions. They think they know what happened. They think
I don't care about other people.
what happened. They think they know who's responsible.
Do you know that you told me?
Everything.
Do you know what you told me?
Because you weren't there. So
You're right. I wasn't there. I was kept
that's
in
right.
the lab.
And one day,
Two kids
you will know.
murdered.
One day,
Murdered.
you will know what actually happened.
You're right. You know what, Mom?
And we all will stand there with
Everything is right. You're absolutely right. He will convict the people who act in his name with pure blasphemy. This is funny? This is funny? This is funny. You're laughing like this is funny. How come your camera's on, Mom? You don't want to look at me in the eye? Why can't you look at me? It's
nice
just
to
you
talk
and me.
to
I'm in
you
my house
folks.
alone.
I love you. I always will. One day you will see and one day you will understand.
Go ahead and
I
hang
do
up.
love
See
you.
how that works for you. You gonna hang
I
up?
don't have anything else to say. You obviously don't know.
Let me tell you
You
something.
weren't there. You weren't there. Summer wasn't there. My mom wasn't there. The police weren't there. The FBI weren't there.
You're right,
Nobody
Mom wasn't there.
was there.
Tyler and JJ, Mom.
Yeah, and guess what? They know. They know exactly what happened. And they love me. And we're still together forever. They love me. And they are fine. And they do know the truth. And I know the truth. And we're the only people that do. So you can judge me, Colby, all day long. Go ahead and judge me. The whole world
Judge me?
has. The whole world has judged me.
Listen to me.
They don't know, and
please
you
stop.
don't know. You know what I've been through, and you didn't even give a crap what they've been through. Nobody does.
I don't.
Except for me. I'm the one that knows. I am the one that was in the hospital with Tylee for hundreds of days watching her suffer. I am the one that was there doing everything with JJ every day. I was the one who did it all these years.
You did it all to throw it in the garbage. They're not.
You don't know what happened. You don't know what happened.
Freaking matter what happened if they're buried in your new husband's backyard. Tell me that matters what happened. You tell me that you did this in Jesus' name, Mom. I have to hear that out of you. You believe it and you are not afraid. Every witness of Christ will scream his name when he comes back. So you are that person.
I am that person. I am that person. And he will come to you. Oh, yeah, Colby, because that's what it is. You don't even know. You weren't even
When
there.
I see you outside in October, what did you tell me? What did you tell me? What lies did you feed me? Why would you lie to me if you're with the Lord and you've seen Him, and I'm just talking purely to you, and you've seen Jesus Christ, where's the fear? Why wouldn't you tell me something? Why were you afraid? Why is everyone against you? Why is everything
Okay,
against my mom?
you can be against me all you want. One day, we will all stand there with Jesus. We will all stand there with Jesus, and you will know the truth of everything.
Hey, isn't it?
Not for me.
You're telling me that this was all done in light. Say it. Tell me that this was done in Jesus' name.
You don't know what happened.
Why? Why don't I know, Mom? Oh, because I was kept in the dark to protect me? You know who needed protecting? My little dead siblings. That's who needed protecting, Mom. This
Where were you
is
to
not
do that? Is that what you think you did?
You ran away.
I hadn't been.
A month later, you ran away. I never wanted you guys to leave. I would have taken those kids in 1 second. I would bring them into my home, and I would have taken care of them. That's not even a question to me.
Yeah, everybody says
You can't say that you know.
Everybody says that.
Says it now. Where was my offer?
I'm
Where's the offer?
saying
Well, you
I did everything for them.
Well, me and Peter Griffin run away together in Hawaii? How about that? If you would have offered me, you would have known. You cannot sit here and lie to
9 minutes and a little more than 20 seconds of a 12-minute call. Again, that was between Colby and Lori Vallow, her oldest son. A lot to unpack in there.
There's a lot, and it seemed just it's awful to listen to, honestly, just because you can hear how heartbroken he is in his voice.
So that played in court, and what was the reaction in the courtroom, both from Colby and from folks watching?
Well, Colby had his head down the entire time, so he was actually brought back on the stand. They dismissed him, and then they were going to play the call, but the judge was like, I would rather have the witness on the stand. He went back up there. He was crying, but he kept his head down, and the attorneys were given an opportunity to question him about it, and they didn't really follow up. Honestly, the call speaks for itself.
So we've explained we don't have any cameras in the courtroom, so that's why you're seeing the sketches that we've been showing you of Colby on the stand and of all of the witnesses. So several things in there that really stand out to me. I mean, one is just the again, the pain in his voice and that confrontation of his mom to say, tell me something.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened.
What happened? And,
Right.
and her response is, "You don't know. You weren't there. You don't judge me."
But then why not just explain?
Right.
Why not just explain what happened?
Sure.
I
And
guess
that's probably the frustrating part, though, here
Exactly.
for Colby is he's asking, and he's not getting these answers, even though he's talking to the one person who can answer all of his questions.
and it's really like kind of I would say his reaction to her saying, I am sorry you feel this way.
Right.
He got angrier. And it's not I feel horrible for you. I'm so sorry. I'm in jail and your siblings are dead and I miss them and I love you. It's like, sorry you feel that way, but that's not what happened.
And he points that out and says, you keep taking the victim route.
Yeah.
Why do you keep doing that? And I think even at that same time, kind of pointing to his own feeling, betrayed and potentially a victim of his mom, saying, I now know that my siblings were dead. And he spoke about Tylee specifically and about JJ specifically and saying at the same time I'm getting text messages. So clearly pointing to potential, significant manipulation and some significant trying to hide this.
And the fact that she starts laughing in the middle of this phone
Yeah.
call while he's asking these questions, I think while I was watching the overflow room and listening to this, it was kind of just stunned silence, and you're kind of in just disbelief the entire time that this is actually happening, and this isn't a movie or anything like that. It's real life. It's a real conversation between a son and his mother.
And it's literally seconds after he says, not once but twice, murder, murder. And then she laughs.
So the thing about that, too, is that I was watching the jury at this point, and I can tell you that I don't think any of them expected to hear any of that at all. And just there were Colby walking up, there were gasps, right? Because people knew who he was. But listening to that full phone call, people were also gasping at just how, I don't want to say nonchalant, but very just raw and kind of apathetic, maybe is the right word, that the phone call was, because Colby has so much emotion, and I think he's trying to keep it contained. And he still says, I prayed for you, I pray for you,
right?
And he's still it's your mother.
Exactly.
You still care about your mom, but his heartbreak is just so real, and the jury's faces were just stunned, shocked, stoic, just back and forth, just what's going on, and you have to keep it together in there, obviously, but I don't think that anybody could sit right after that. It was very tense, you could cut the air with a knife or something.
Yeah. And parent-child dynamic, one of the very, and probably potentially the only relationship like that, where we hear horrendous stories of abuse and of mistreatment, and yet children love their parents.
Yeah.
And so it is, you can hear that heartbreak, and you can hear that kind of, almost begging her to please help me make sense of this, right? Please help me reconcile some of this that sounds incredibly painful. And then to have her then say, they love me. She said, they love me. We're still together forever. They love me, and they are fine, and they do know the truth, and I know the truth. Speaking about Tylee and JJ.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because in my mind, just how I was processing it was she says they know what happened, and that she knows what happened, and the only people that matter really know what happened. So I feel in my mind that means that she does know why that they were killed, and has more information about it. And obviously the prosecution is trying to prove that, but I was even scrolling through Twitter that day, and everyone was like, man, that just was a punch in the gut. That really sealed the deal for Colby's testimony. And honestly, that's probably why they kept him on the stand, in such a short time, because that call was everything that they needed.
Yeah. And the courage that he had to be on that stand, looking at his mother.
I can't imagine.
Right. Me neither.
Well, and that's another thing too. When I was sitting there, so the prosecution and the defense actually went into chambers, and it was Colby on the stand, so it was like a recess kind of, and Colby was on the stand, and Lori was still at the defense table, and her eyes did not leave Colby at all. She just kept her gaze the whole time, and he did not look at her. He kept his eyes down. I could tell from his upper body that I think his leg was shaking, so he was really uncomfortable. He wiped his nose a couple times, and then he left the stand for the second time. He walked out. He adjusted his tie. He glanced at his mom, shook his head, and walked out.
Wow. But did not waver in terms of, didn't want to look at her, but still.
It looks like he locked eye contact with her to prove a point, and he was like, I'm out.
Yeah.
And that was just, oof.
Powerful.
Yeah, I think so.
Powerful.
Real quick, I saw, we caught up with the Woodcocks today, JJ's grandparents, and they said that the most surprising part of yesterday's testimony was this recording, but someone else told them at this point, yes, it's surprising, but nothing's really surprising in this case.
Right.
And I feel like that kind of sums it up, for everything that we see and what we will likely see moving forward.
Well, and I think I have found myself feeling the same way, because I haven't covered it the way you two have. I haven't watched it, from start to finish the way that you all have as the reporters covering this story. And so I think with each new revelation, it feels like a deeper, like I said, I think the manipulation feels deeper. The inconsistencies become much larger and more widespread. And so it does really start to call into question how much more can there be.
Yeah, I mean, and we have so long to go.
Yeah,
you know, and
right.
it's like, how do the prosecutors even deal with this?
I
Like,
know.
how many pages of notes and evidence do they have to stack up and go through? It's just, it seems
Yeah.
impossible for us to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Let alone them.
And,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we talked about that, it is like a puzzle, and so we are seeing a lot of back and forth, and I think there's the little pieces that get put in that we're trying to paint that bigger picture, and that's kind of what happened after Colby's testimony. We started to kind of go a little bit quicker through a couple of those witnesses, but the theme here is really looking at some of this idea of the fraud and the financial potentially the financial impact, or what did you hear from those witnesses?
well, we know that obviously Lori was receiving the Social Security benefits, and then those benefits were being deposited into her account after they died.
Right, and today especially, we heard from a FBI forensic accountant who really just laid out a timeline of what, Lori Vallow's financial records looked like, Chad Daybell, Tylee, and kind of just went through, month by month in the year and where all these funds were going, who was getting it. We learned that he went through nearly 80 bank statements and records and credit cards just among those three people. So it's an alarming amount of financial records to go through, and that we heard over the last day.
And these would have been payments that would have been coming to both Tylee and JJ for different reasons, correct? Like
Right,
government funding and
Yeah,
support.
from the-
So
support.
Tylee received Social Security benefits after Joe Ryan died, her dad, and then JJ received them after Charles Vallow died. And then also Lori also received a stipend as well, to the tune of $1,900 or something to that extent, and it was for basically taking care of JJ, being the mother as well. And so, and then we, over the course, we learned that she eventually transferred all of their Social Security benefits to herself.
And so
and she was
kept
running out of
keeping
money
them,
too.
right.
Like a police officer testified yesterday that her account was overdrafting like her joint account with Charles. So she was running out of money, and then these accounts that she called to have their benefits transferred over to her account. And I think what's interesting about today was, so she was transferring benefits into her joint account with Tylee, and then added that bank account to Tylee's Venmo. So we have a separate bank account for Tylee, we have a separate bank account for Lori, and then we have a joint one. And Tylee used her own bank account connected to her Venmo, okay? But really, I think it was either after she died or like around the time she died, her Venmo had a new bank account attached to it, and that was the joint account, and that was where the Venmo transactions were coming from after Tylee was missing to
Right.
Colby.
But yet making it look like
It was Tylee.
they were coming from Tylee.
Yeah,
Right,
so-
and they actually tracked the IP address as well for one of those transactions to Colby from Tylee's Venmo account, and it was in October. And so at this point, Tylee's believed to be, gone, and they were saying that Lori and her niece, Melanie Boudreau, at the time now Pulowski, was in Kansas City. And this IP address was tracked to Kansas City.
And that's where that forensic stuff, and again, it's very technical, it gets very detailed. However, it also is very specific. And so obviously pointing to an area or location where nobody else was, or nobody else except Lori would have been, certainly helps to also kind of fill in one more piece. And again, just making it look like, again, there's nothing to say that she wasn't there, right? Not that she wasn't the one doing this. And obviously that's what some of these witnesses are helping us to know, and hoping that the jury, prosecutors are hoping rather, that the jury hears that and believes that. Do we know anything about what's to come next in this? We don't have a witness list, so we don't know what's coming up, right?
No, we don't. But I think a lot of people have said things about, the witnesses being out of order and stuff. But I think, like Morgan was saying the last time we were here, it's really just a weaving process, and it'll all come together eventually at some point. And also people were saying that Lori Vallow's mother was in
Right.
town,
Yeah, I
which I
heard
thought
that.
was interesting. I haven't seen her, but who knows if she will testify.
And
We
I
don't
thought
know.
about that listening to the call because she specifically talks about her mom in
Yeah.
that phone call with Colby, and she lists Summer. She lists, that's her sister. She lists her mother. And actually, that I thought of that as we were listening to that call and wondering, because I had heard the same thing, that potentially her mother is in town. Will she take the stand? We don't know. But if she does, we, of course, will be there to bring that information to you. Now, if you have questions about this trial, we are giving you as much in-depth coverage as we possibly can about what's going on. If you have questions that you want to send us, you can text us to the number on your screen, 208-321-5614. Let us know if you have questions, and we will make sure that we answer those as much as we possibly can. We appreciate you being here with us. Thank you, Alex and Shirah, for sharing your insight, and we will continue to bring this to you inside the courtroom, the Lori Vallow trial.